Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Over Tampons from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit, and it says, Am I the Arsehole Here? Husband refused to buy me tampons. Now, just a warning before we do get into this story, there's going to be talk of blood within this story, so if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. It starts. I'm sorry in advance for grammar and errors. On an iPhone typing this. For starters, I 24 female, a stay-at-home mum, and my husband 30 male is the breadwinner. I like to think I do my best to take care of him. We also have a 1-year-old that I am the primary caregiver for. Now to the main point. Yesterday, I woke up to find my period had come. I'm currently weaning from breastfeeding. This affects my cycle. It was very heavy and I bled through the sheets and on the bed. My husband was not happy because he had to help me clean up. I was soaked in blood. After I cleaned myself, I cleaned my mess and washed and scrubbed the bed. My husband was still not happy. Later that day, I noticed I was low on tampons, so I called husband and asked him to please pick me up some. To my surprise, he said, no. I asked if he'd do pads then. He replied, no. I was kind of shocked and asked, what am I to do? He said, well, are you paying for them? I'm obviously confused at this point when he then states, if you can't pay for them, sucks to suck, and hangs up. So, being on my period, my emotions are everywhere. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I've been crying non-stop and I'm down to 4 tampons. I feel humiliated and I don't live close to family. He has my car and I have no money or savings. Gave him everything when I became a stay-at-home mum. And I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. I asked him again last night and he said, you got the money yet? He made me sleep on the couch as to not bleed through again. I've never felt so humiliated and ashamed in my life. Later, he suggested if I can't come up with the money, I could use a child's diaper, further making me feel terrible. I finally felt some surge of confidence and asked him if he thought of me as a wife or something less than human that he's putting me in mental distress and humiliating me by suggesting such a disgusting thing. He said, well, if you don't figure it out, that's what you'll have to do. Am I the arsehole for asking for tampons? Note, we live in the US and tampons are between $7 to $10. We are middle class and not struggling for money. A mini update in the same post that said, I called my sister. She's my big sister. She's so sweet. She sent me a box of tampons and candy and some meds and sodas. I thank you all for responding. I feel I overreacted. Also for all suggestions of divorce. How? I have nothing, nowhere to go. I could not even afford tampons. Is there another way I can try and fix what is done? I'm going to try and get an online job so I can work and still keep my household and take care of my baby. I'm thankful for all. Thank you. Now from that mini update, I can already feel how the comments are going to go, and it's exactly the same way that I'm feeling. There were so many red flags within one post, getting angry at you for having natural bodily functions, refusing to buy tampons, necessary hygiene products, making you sleep on the couch to avoid bleeding through. I mean, what kind of fucking scumbag is this? And it only gets worse when he's suggesting that you use your baby's diaper, and of course there's controlling all the finances, isolating you. You said that you don't live in a family and don't have access to transportation. You know, it's all red flags. It just comes across like all the behavior that we're seeing in this is abusive behavior. So, you know, we're gonna go to some comments and hopefully the comments did get through to OP, but the first one says, this is financial abuse. Talk to your family, get a lawyer, file for divorce, take the child, get all you can from him. Different pin says, and damn, not just that. She's his wife, mother of his child, and he's pissed about her having an accident. Made her sleep on the couch. He's dehumanizing her and putting her between a rock and a hard place. I'm disgusted. I once had to trudge 2 miles in ankle-deep snow for tampons because my ex-boyfriend wouldn't drive me. He drove a stick and I had no car. Oh, he told me to pick up cigarettes while I was at it. I thought that was bad, but this takes the cake. ETA, for some reason people are bent out of shape by me calling this an accident. Have you ever farted and accidentally shit yourself? Well, some of us get our period and don't realize it, or some of us have a heavy flow and overfill. It's a biological thing that you can't always prepare for. Accidents happen, biological or not. Opie says, I cannot divorce. I can't even buy my own tampons. How am I to afford divorce? Commenter replies saying you can divorce as the system does allow you to take on debt to do so. You can talk to your family about having them cover the costs and you pay them back. You can talk to a lawyer to see if they can do it in a way that will charge him after completion or to be paid after completion out of any proceeds. So yes, you can divorce, as these are just 3 ways to do it. The other option you have is to be your husband's slave. Opie says, I'm not going to put myself in debt for a divorce. My family is against divorce, especially since children are involved. I've tried talking to a lawyer and they've all insisted on meeting in person. I have nothing where there's transportation. Not only that, I'd lose more than I gain. Commenter replies saying, then you and your family have resolved that it's okay for your husband to abuse you. Lawyers insist on in person and in private for your protection and theirs. I wish you well. So it was 7 months after that post that OP came in to update and said, I just came back to update. First things first, to answer some of the comments on the previous post. No, this isn't rage bait, unfortunately. That was just my life. No, the post isn't fake. My husband was just a complete arsehole. We'll elaborate in the update. Looking back now, I can very clearly see I was being abused mentally and financially, but not just me, my child too. Now for the update. As I said, my sister DoorDashed me supplies for my situation, period. She knows what it's like. She came from a domestic violence situation. But what I didn't know is she had messaged my entire family about the situation, including my husband's parents. So he got the surprise of his life coming home to them, not me. Apparently they ripped into him until he was brought to tears, and that was just the beginning. Then my parents showed up. They live very far away from us, and they basically tag teamed his ass. Apparently the guys at work got into his head that since I had a baby, I should have bounced back better. And he better be careful of me getting fat. What the fuck does that have to do with a period? I don't know. But they apparently just keep laying it on him. He also explained to me that he has gender disappointment. Yep, our baby isn't a boy. And I asked him, so you'd treat her like that? To which this man sobbed uncontrollably at my feet. We started marriage counseling and parenting classes, and I now have full assistance to our banks. They even set me up a just-in-case account for if he ever does this shit again. And he deposits in it every time he's paid, and only I have access to withdraw the funds. I don't think this one was necessary, but I have forgiven him for holding on to things like this. It weighs down on my heart, but I will not forget. But I will say it's only been 205 days since that post, and I feel like I have my dream man back. I have my sister to thank for that. Sorry if this is an update you didn't ask for or wanted. Sorry didn't get a divorce, but thanks for all the responses to my old post. Commenters say to this one, it takes a woman an average of 7 times to leave in an abusive relationship. Trauma bonding is very real and very hard to break. At least you have funds to leave the next time he shows his abusive nature. I promise you, he won't change. It took me 3 times before it stuck with me. Wishing your daughter the best. Ancient Meal says, I can understand why you stayed, but you need to understand that his current behavior is only because his family shamed him. He refused to buy you feminine hygiene products, financially abused you, and when you asked for tampons, he wrote, it sucks to suck. He was getting some sort of sick enjoyment watching you suffer. He will revisit his past behavior again, but at least you have access to funds so you can leave him. He is blaming his work colleagues for his behavior. You must realize this is just an excuse. The gender disappointment is also an excuse. Becca UK says, but maybe him seeing how his family reacted might be a changing point. I'm assuming he has a good relationship with his family, and for them to have OP's back might have been a wake-up call. Hopefully it was, and the counseling helps as well. If not, then at least OP has funds if it happens again, although I'd maybe open a new account that he doesn't know about just in case. If it all goes well for the next few decades, it could be a nice retirement fund. I gotta be honest, on the back of that one, it just made me feel extremely anxious. Like some of the comments saying the excuses that he was using, and It took entire family to intervene to make this change. When the parents and the in-laws ripped into him, as it said, it hit differently than when his own wife, the person that should be number one in his life, expressed her needs. It just said all I need to know about whose opinions he actually values. And for me, I just struggle to see that change lasting. I mean, maybe that's pessimistic, but you know, I've seen too much of this shit, and maybe that's just me reading too many of these stories. All I can say on the back of this is that I really wish OP and the child all the best going forward. But what do you guys make of this situation? Do you agree with the comments after this one? Do you think change can actually happen? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from Clouds Raining from the Am I the Arsehole, and it was also cross-posted to the Pro Revenge subreddit. And it said, Am I the Arsehole for saying I'm bilingual when I know ASL? And it has a 2.5-year update as well. For context, some of my family members are deaf/hard of hearing. Because of that, everyone in my family knows ASL. It was actually my first language because my dad is deaf. Most people don't know I know ASL because there usually isn't a reason for me to sign. I, 16 female, was with my friends and a new girl that my other friends know, 18 female. She was saying how she was sorry if sometimes she has trouble speaking because English isn't her first language. I told her it was fine and it wasn't mine either, and we moved on. Later that day, we were at a skate park and our ethnicities came up. She was bragging about knowing Spanish because her mum was from Mexico, and she turned to me and asked what other languages I spoke. I told her ASL. She didn't like that. She went on a whole rant about how it wasn't a real language because it didn't have culture. She kept saying it was glorified Morse code because all you need to do is know the alphabet. I tried telling her that wasn't true and it has grammar very different than normal English. Eventually I just said we should drop it, but she wouldn't. She's currently spamming the group chat with articles about how easy it is to learn, or social media posts about how ASL isn't a language, and even scientific papers about that gorilla, that new sign language. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Our friend group is divided because on one hand, ASL might be easier to learn than most languages, but some think it's not even a real language. Am I the arsehole? The top commenter on that one said, not the arsehole, that's some weird ableist nonsense. It's totally another language. Hell, it's right there in the acronym. Cassidy says, hopping on top, deaf culture is absolutely a thing. I know some ASL, but I'm a member of the disabled community who have our own separate culture. Deaf culture is a whole thing. They have their own social norms that are vastly different from other cultures. They have their own jokes, their own manners, their own nuanced etiquette. Saying that ASL doesn't have a culture is 1, ableist, 2, wildly wrong. Seriously, tell the person to go watch a YouTube video on it. They are very, very mistaken. Not the arsehole. And Photogenic says 1000% not the arsehole. I'm fluent in American Sign Language as well, and it is definitely a foreign language. All 50 states to some extent, some more than others, recognize it as a foreign language. Your acquaintance is mistaken and ignorant of ASL and deaf culture, and needs to step off. All I felt from that is that this friend, whole identity seems to be like, I'm the multilingual person here, and OP is basically threatening that, so the friend doesn't like it and is trying to bring OP down. But it was around 2.5 years later, OP came in with a post which was presumably on the Pro Revenge subreddit that said, I became fluent in Spanish to spite an ableist and got her expelled from college. Background, some members of my family are deaf/hard of hearing. Runs in the family, so we all know ASL in my family. ASL was my first language. I had to go to speech therapy because I almost never spoke out loud at home. Even now when I get overwhelmed, I sometimes end up signing by accident. Also in my city, pretty much everyone goes to the 2 huge state schools in the area. Me and the ableist ended up going to the same college. So about 2 years ago-ish, I, 16 female then, 18 female now, had an altercation with a girl. 18 female then, 20 female now. Now my friends were hanging out with. She claimed ASL was not a real language, and then she knew Spanish, that it was filled with rich culture, which it is. But that doesn't mean you get to say that ASL isn't a real language with real culture. She said it was a superpower I didn't possess. It ended up dividing our friend group over whether or not I could say I was bilingual. I was a shy and meek person then, so I didn't really stand up for myself. I went to the r/am-I-the-arsehole subreddit to see if I was going crazy. Many people responded to my post telling me that I wasn't overreacting or in the wrong. I knew deaf culture is so rich and diverse, but all these strangers encouraging and validating me helped me to fully process what was happening. Deaf slams, and it says Devia, which I hadn't heard of before, but it says on Google Devia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, stands for Deaf View/Image Art, and it's a genre of visual art that intentionally represents the deaf experience and culture. Opie continues, the nursery rhymes I grew up on, etc. That all seemed foreign and maybe strange to hearing people, are all things I feel at home with. When I tried explaining things to the girl, she didn't want to hear it. Even some of the people I called friends were saying I was in the wrong. ASL is a joke of a class to them. This made me so mad. The amount of times I had seen my family experience ableism growing up, having to fight for my family at such a young age, just for my friends to turn on me like that. I told this girl, if ASL is so easy, why didn't you learn it? She said it wasn't worth her time. She told me I should learn a real language. I was fuming, but I realized she had just kind of admitted that ASL was difficult to learn. She was nervous. I was 90% sure she couldn't just breeze by learning ASL. I decided then and there I would learn Spanish to prove that my first language was real and important. I went to the library, checked out books on Spanish. I signed up for the paid language learning program my library offered for free. I took dual enrollment classes at a local college. When I later got into college, I tested into Spanish level 3 and continued studying. I got a job, unrelated to my revenge quest, where it turned out a lot of my co-workers spoke it. So this gave me an opportunity to learn the nuances, slang, etc. This helped me not sound like an excerpt from the textbook. I put my phone in Spanish. I text with people who could only speak Spanish online. After about a year of constant immersion, my co-workers told me I was sounding pretty good. I'd already had to learn English when I first went to school. I think that made it a lot easier. I found it to be a really beautiful language. I decided I need to step up my game even more than I already was. I watched movies and read books almost exclusively in Spanish. I went to the Hispanic area of my city constantly. I made friends there. I told them up front my plan. I was a little worried that they would react the same way to ASL that the other girls did, but they didn't at all. They were supportive and affirmed that sign languages are real languages. Having these new friends allowed me to shift away from this old friend group. I still skated with the old group from time to time, but it was nothing like how I was with the group before. My new friends understood what it was like to deal with prejudice from the world when their family didn't understand/hear English. They knew what it was like to feel like a foreigner in two cultures. They understood how it was to be a translator by the time you were in elementary school. I could relate so well to them. By the time I had been learning the language for almost 2 years, I had just about forgotten why I'd set out to learn Spanish. Then I got a text from the group chat the ableist girl was in. They wanted to film some skate clips for another guy's Instagram. It was going to be him, another kid, the ableist girl, and me. I knew this was the perfect time to get my revenge. When I arrived at the hangout, everyone but the girl was there. Me and other people were talking when she came up to us. After some filming, we sat down for a water break. We started talking about school, just random stuff. Then she brought up how teachers didn't understand her since her brain worked differently because she was bilingual. Another person said she was just bilingual, not on the spectrum or anything. While I don't agree with that, it felt kind of weird to mention autistic people randomly. It was the perfect in for me. She went on a very opinionated rant, saying how none of us could possibly understand what it was like for her. Mind you, her native language is English, so it wasn't like she was having problems with that in school. I told her I spoke multiple languages. She said, "What? That talking with your BS doesn't count. Is this a sign?" She jumbled her hands, the equivalent of speaking gibberish, and asking if that was a word in English. She was hysterically laughing like this wasn't something I had heard since I started going to school. I replied in Spanish, using the very colourful curse words I learned from working fast food with a bunch of disgruntled people. She said I just learned those words, that I didn't actually know Spanish. We then proceeded to have a heated discussion, all in Spanish. She was yelling at me by the end. The two other people were now very confused. I explained to them that I learned Spanish out of spite, to prove ASL was a real language. I said that Spanish was an easy language. I was lying. It is pretty difficult, and asked her why she hadn't learned the glorified Morse code I spoke. She then replied with the most satisfying thing I have ever heard. But you already knew another language, so of course it was easier for you. She tried to backtrack after I caught that, but it was too late. She was already throwing a temper tantrum. I told her that ASL and deaf culture were as real as Spanish. After that massive blow up, we all just went home. The next few days I was spammed with more reasons why ASL wasn't real, but also it was easy for me to learn Spanish because I was bilingual. I ignored them all and blocked her. She started DMing me, where I blocked her too. She then started emailing via the school messaging system, where you can't block people. I was not really affected by her insults to me, but then she started talking about my family. She called them defective, the R word, and incapacitated. She mentioned my little brother, who is hard of hearing and 11 years old. That was the last straw. I went to the dean and had receipts for everything. A full legal name was attached to it all, and they were able to look at the messages in the system. They said immediate action would be taken, that this was unacceptable. She lost her scholarship and was put on academic probation. She started ranting about this on her public Instagram, saying more ableist crap, which the school obviously saw, and they fully expelled her. Offered me a time to talk to a counsellor, a scholarship for CODA, Child of Deaf Adult. I didn't accept the counselling or the scholarship, but I really did appreciate the sentiments. When the first semester ended, I applied for a paid internship where I knew ASL and Spanish. I get paid about 10% more than my colleagues in the same position who speak one language. My friends I made on this revenge journey are the best. I have so much love for them. We've only grown closer following all this drama. The top comment on this one said, excellent pro revenge. Learned a language, got better pay at work, and gave a bully a beatdown. Why would you turn down a scholarship? Opie says, I didn't need it. I haven't gone into debt at all. I'm so grateful and lucky for this. I got a full ride and plus some extra from merit scholarships. I didn't want to take away an opportunity from someone who needs it a lot more than me. There are a lot of coders out there who could really benefit from it, and there were a limited number of scholarships awarded. Amar says, good job OP. You even managed to skid up yourself despite it not being your primary objective. I think what's amusing to me is when she's flexing she is bilingual, and not many people understand the struggles with being bilingual. I was like, huh? People in my country are at minimum bilingual, but mostly trilingual and can still behave normally without any struggles. What is she on about? I was dying in embarrassment when I read that she's flexing her bilingual skill and berated that no one can understand their struggle in being bilingual. Opie says, yeah, I live in an area that has large Hispanic population, so that was funny to me too. The Spanish-speaking young people can form kind of groups, which makes total sense. So I was surprised at first when she didn't really hang out with any other people who spoke Spanish, considering her bilingual struggles that no one could understand or whatever. But I'm 99% sure she did that to seem unique to people who didn't know Spanish. Someone says on how she learned and how good her Spanish is. Opie says I'm like 99% sure 2 to 3 years is pretty normal for the level of immersion I did. Especially over the summer, I was speaking way more Spanish than spoken English. Obviously I'm not on a native level, particularly with reading and writing, but my Spanish gets the job done well. And at this point, the majority of the learning I do is through context clues and new vocab. In my opinion, ASL has a lot more context clues, open to interpretation stuff, and a lot more conveyed through NMMs, non-manual markers like facial expressions, than spoken English, like how ASL omits articles and uses classifiers, and there really isn't a test to determine how fluent you are. I was told by native speakers my speaking was, so that was the word I chose. And at least where I'm from, people usually studying abroad for 1 to 2 semesters, which wouldn't be enough time for me personally to learn a new language. It brings me back to a story that we must have covered, I think it was about a year or so ago, where the guy turned up at his girlfriend's house for the first time and no one seemed to realize that he spoke their language as well. And they started talking about him for some random reason, rudely at the dinner table in their own language and cussing him out and saying, "What is this guy?" etc. And he responded as well, then basically got up and walked out. And I'm always like, oh, I just want to be a fly on the wall in that situation. But what do you guys make of this one? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.